30 years ago, the United States solidified a unique international relationship by signing the Compact of Free Association with the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of Palau. Collectively, these three sovereign nations are referred to as the freely associated states. Under the Compact of Free Association, citizens from the freely associated states can live, work, and study in the United States as legal non-immigrants without a need for a visa. In 2005, Congress enacted the Real ID Act, which enacted the 9/11 Commission's recommendation to set federal standards for driver's license and other sources of identification. However, the Real ID Act of 2005 made no mention of the freely associated states or the compact. Instead, the law referred to the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, a now defunct entity that ceased to exist in 1994. The former trusteeship predated the current self-governing status of the freely associated states as established under the Compact of Free Association. As a result of this error, citizens of the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and Palau are often forced to settle for temporary driver's licenses that expire after a year, costing these citizens access to work, housing, transportation, and other opportunities. Because some employers have been reluctant to hire or retain temporary licensed carriers, many of these citizens lose access to work, housing, transportation, and other opportunities. The omission also greatly disadvantages these citizens to other non-immigrants who are able to obtain standard licenses lasting up to 8 years if they meet the Real ID Act eligibility requirements. H.R. 3398 corrects this drafting error in the Real ID Act. Fixing this error in the law clarifies the legal eligibility of the citizens of these three nations for full-term driver's licenses, honors the terms of our Compact of Free Association, and reaffirms our partnership with the three nations. I would like to thank Representative Don Young, the gentleman from Alaska, and my friend for his work on this important legislation. I urge my colleagues to support this bill and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
The bill before us would make a technical correction to the Real ID Act of 2005. The act incorrectly identified persons from the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and Palau as citizens of the Trust Territories of the Pacific Islands, an entity that has not existed since 1994. This error has caused citizens of these trust territories difficulties because they are often only issued temporary driver's licenses. This in turn makes some employers reluctant to hire these citizens and make it difficult for them to access government services. I support this bill and I urge my colleagues to do so as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honor to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Alaska, the sponsor of this bill, Congressman Young.
The gentleman from Alaska.
Mr. Speaker, I ask Senator Wright and extend, and Mr. Russell, thank you for your work.
Without objection.
Minority member, thank you for the work on this legislation. H.R. 3398 is a bill that should be passed. I strongly support it. And I was listening to the testimony from the chairman, and he's put it so well, I probably won't speak anymore. I do believe that what he said is all true, is necessary, is needed. This is something that was an oversight, because I was here when we wrote the original bill in 2005, and it was an oversight, and you did a great job explaining it, and this is needed for those citizens that we consider from Palau, Micronesia, and the other islands there, and we'll do the work, and I want to thank you again for your work. And with that, I yield back.
I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield as much time as she may consume to the gentlelady from Hawaii, Ms. Hanabusa.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 3398, the Real ID Act Modifications for Freely Associated States Act. And I want to thank my colleague and good friend from Alaska, Congressman Don Young, for introducing this important bill, which I proudly co-sponsored. Through the Compacts of Free Association, the United States and the freely associated states, the Republic of Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of Palau agree to the terms of our special and unique government-to-government relationships. It is through these compacts that the citizens of the freely associated states can enter the U.S. to live, work, study, and visit indefinitely as legal non-immigrants without visa, with guaranteed access to social and health services. In return, the U.S. has defense and certain other operating rights in the freely associated states, denial of access to the territory by other nations, and other agreements of strategic importance to the United States. The freely associated state citizens migrate to Hawaii and other places in the U.S. for many reasons, including but not limited to job and economic opportunities. Hawaii is one of the 4 recognized affected jurisdictions by the U.S. government. The Hawaii experiences the highest impact of fast migrants. The other affected jurisdictions are Guam, Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, and American Samoa. Based on the U.S. Census data for 2010 to 2014, the 5 states with the highest number of FAST citizens are Hawaii with 7,205, Arkansas with 3,625, Washington with 3,430, Oregon with 2,580, and Texas with 2,090. Unfortunately, when Congress passed the Real ID Act in 2005, it issued an obsolete reference to the freely associated states countries, specifically identifying them as trust territories of the Pacific Islands. As a result, when the freely associated state migrants seek to obtain a U.S. ID or license, they can only obtain a temporary license for 1 year, since they are legally non-citizens without an end date of their stay. This is extremely problematic when the migrants seek employment, and this further complicates our ability to accurately assess the size of the FAST citizen population. It is clear Congress intended to include the freely associated state citizen migrants under the Real ID Act, and I appreciate Congressman Jung's effort to correct the record and end the ambiguity which keeps FAST citizens from fully participating in our country and becoming self-sufficient members of our society. And Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to remind people why we even have these compacts. It is because the United States did do atomic bomb testing, nuclear testing in this area, and as a result, it has affected their health, their ability to retain and stay in their home countries, and the compacts give them free access. Hawaii is one of the most affected, and we carry a lot of the costs associated with the compacts, especially in the area of medical, education, and housing. So the ability to have these real IDs then will facilitate the various migrants' ability to actually seek jobs and have an equal footing in terms of economic opportunity. I strongly encourage my colleagues to support H.R. 3398, and I yield back my time to the gentleman from California.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to make the gentleman from California aware I have no further speakers and am prepared to close.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge adoption of the bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 3398? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid on the table.